Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm Dr. Heidi. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and this is the first of hopefully many health classes that I'll be putting on. I really wanted to reach out to the public, reach out to Conifer, Bailey, Evergreen, our area up here, but also abroad to everyone else who can't make it to Colorado, and just kind of talk about natural medicine, talk about what I do in my practice. I'm a little different than, every other naturopath, and so I think it helps to kind of explain it. And I don't have a quick elevator speech, so we'll see how long this takes. Hopefully you guys enjoy it, ask questions along the way. We'll go ahead and get started. So as a naturopathic doctor, so what exactly is that, right? So I'm not a medical doctor. I did go to medical school, however, it's a naturopathic medical school. You get the same four-year undergraduate degree, start medical school with 2 years of the basic sciences. We learn anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, all of the ologies, right? Pharmacology even, we have minor surgery. And then our second 2 years, we focus on all the natural stuff. So homeopathy, hydrotherapy, botanical medicine, nutrition, Chinese medicine, physical adjusting. And then we're also in clinic at that time too. So part of my story, I like to always say that I was spending, my time Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 in naturopathic school, and then nights and weekends I was studying everything else there was to know about natural medicine. So I took Applied Kinesiology, which we're going to kind of dive into a little bit more, and that really opened up things on the energetic side of practice. There's also a lot of other things that we don't learn in school, like the whole botanical side and getting more knowledge in that aspect as well. Chinese medicine, acupuncture, shadowing different doctors, because I really wanted to know, how do I help my patients and how do I treat them? When I was in my undergrad, which I did in Colorado State University, I would shadow several naturopaths, and a lot of people, told me, they're like, as a naturopath, sometimes you don't have as big of a toolbox as we'd like. So, they'd recommend doing acupuncture or a different, profession. So going into naturopathic school, I knew that I had this calling and that natural medicine was really right for me. And so I was like, I can't not do this. So while I'm in school, let's figure out how we can have a big toolbox. And now in my practice, I feel like I have all of the tools that I need to really get people better. So let's talk about naturopathic medicine first. So when I say naturopathic medicine, it's kind of an overall umbrella term for, all things. There's Chinese medicine, there's Ayurvedic medicine, there's, your grandma's backyard medicine that she was doing, right? Like all of these things, there's medicine literally all around us, in the air we breathe, in, a lot of weeds that are in our backyard. We can use those as medicine too, even in the things that we think about. Emotions is a big thing that I tie into my practice. And so really looking at the whole body. So in Applied Kinesiology, we really focus on a triad. So a triad of health, which is the structural side over here, the chemical side over here, and then the emotional side, that's the base. That's kind of like what's holding us all together. And so in the office, I'm looking at all three of these parts all the time. So I'm always going to ask the question of, is it a chemical thing? So this is nutrition. This is what we're putting in our body. This is also any toxins that we could be exposed to. Viruses and all of that, bacteria, that all falls in this chemical part. And then there's the structural part of things. So structure is like, how is your body actually moving in space? How is joints and all of this going? Also visceral organs, what's going on in here? Lungs, heart, all of that kind of stuff. It also has to do with the skull. So a lot of people don't realize that the bones in our skull move. And so, migraines is something that I treat all the time, and I have really good success with migraine patients. Most of the time they come in and they say things like, oh yeah, I always get a migraine and it's always in this one spot, or it's always behind my eye, or it's always here. So it's like something in your cranium, in your skull, is not aligned right. And so we just kind of have to really gently put it back into place. And migraines go away. you know? Of course, there's other underlying things for migraines sometimes, but a lot of time it is that structure. And so if we're just throwing out supplements to people, but we never fix that structure, how close are we really getting to the root cause? The same goes for emotion. You know, that's so much of what we are, right? The emotions that we've, good emotions, bad emotions, feelings that we have. A lot of people are up in our head, you know, a lot of the time, not really getting into the body and feeling it. And so, you know, I like to teach people too, like how to understand your emotions, how to feel your emotions. And then in the office, we do this awesome technique. I'm not going to talk too much about it today, but it's called Neuroemotional Technique, NET. And it's a way that we can just access the emotion, figure out what it is, where and when it's been affecting you, and then get rid of it, so it's not affecting you anymore. And so, you know, this works really well with people who have like childhood traumas, or not even traumas, but just, you know, my mom always told me that I have to do this thing. And now, you know, later on as you grow up, like this thing could be inhibiting you, but really there's no connection anymore. It's just that it's ingrained in our psyche, and we just have to shift it and get you out of that rut so that you can keep going. So you may be asking, well, where do you start, right? So that is where applied kinesiology comes in. So applied kinesiology is muscle testing, kind of overarching, you know, what we call muscle testing. So this was created by Dr. Goodhart. He's a chiropractor. He invented it, or kind of discovered it more in the 60s, where he was, you know, as a chiropractor adjusting people, or they'd come in and say, you know, something's going on with my shoulder. He tests muscles, which is not a chiropractic thing, it's a neurology thing. Just seeing like, okay, does this muscle connect to your brain? You know, and how much does it connect to your brain? And so he was finding that if he had a, you know, an inhibited, what we call, or a weak muscle, and he touched something on the spine, that muscle got stronger. Or he touched something on the visceral, muscle got stronger. He did something with emotion, that muscle got stronger. So he kept asking the question of like, why? Like, what is this connection? Why is the strength being changed by something that I'm touching? And that's where this magic comes in. Because it's not, you know, people on the table all the time, they're like, wow, I definitely felt that this was weak, and all of a sudden you did something, and now this is solid, right? Like, I can't push this down if I tried. And so that is where I can figure out, and it's not really me, it's you, your body telling me what it is that it needs to heal. And so with the muscle testing, we can kind of understand that a little bit more. So let's back up again. So where did Dr. Goodhart get all this from? So yes, he you know, was a chiropractor, so he knew a lot of things about muscles and nerves and all of that, but he also practiced Chinese medicine. And so in Chinese medicine, there's all these meridian systems. And so each organ, like the stomach or the large intestine or the spleen, they all have their own meridian system in Chinese medicine. Each meridian is connected to a muscle. Each meridian is also connected to an emotion. There's also ones that correlate with different nutrition that we could need, or foods, you know, that kind of stuff, supplements, homeopathy, whatever. But so he was finding that there's correlations between the meridian, the organ, the muscle, the emotion, the supplement, and then he'd be able to treat based on that. So if you came in with a stomach problem and I'm testing stomach muscles and they're off, then I get to ask the question, okay, is it chemical? Do we need to fix this with a supplement or homeopathy or a diet? Sometimes water, you know, is like the best thing for all of us. Or is it emotional? Is, you know, something, the emotion for stomach, disgust, right? Just, ugh, you know? So is that what's coming up for you today? Or is it structural? Is it that the nerves that are innervating the stomach need to be adjusted? And so then, you know, we get to decide. And how do we know? Well, we try it, and whatever makes that muscle strong, that's the nutrition, that's the supplement, that's the adjustment that you'll need. And then, you know, we just kind of roll with that. And so that is where we find very specific things. So in naturopathic school, you know, we'll learn about the stomach. I guess I'll just use this as an example. And if you have a stomach issue, it could be, you know, a myriad of things, and guess what treats it? Like 25 different herbs and supplements, right? So how do I know that I'm giving you the right thing for your stomach? Well, we muscle test it, right? I don't just say, okay, here, try these, come back in a month and let's see what happens. No, I'm going to say, let's, smell this. So again, we're connecting to the nerves, to that organ, to that muscle, and saying, does this nutrition that I'm giving you make this better for the body, right? Does it help the energetics of it? Does it help the nerve supply of it? And is it going to help you heal? And so that way, I don't have to guess. I get to say, this is going to help you. Go forth and take this for 2 weeks to a month. Come back and let's see where your symptoms are. Let's see where your muscle testing, kind of shows up. And we go from there. And guess what? People get better, right? And so they come back, and now it's not the stomach anymore. Maybe it's the small intestine or the large intestine. And we do the same kind of muscle testing to find out where are we going to go with our treatment, based on what we found in the muscle testing. So let's talk a little bit about the visits. So, someone comes into us, and let's say they're 50 years old. So they have 5 decades of potential issues that could have been happening in their body. And so I like to think of it as layers, right? So it's not like, you come to me and you say your stomach hurts, and it's like, okay, great, we're gonna give you slippery elm. Yeah, we're gonna help your stomach, right? We're gonna give you some apple cider vinegar and help the stomach. No, we're gonna see what is the priority. So at every visit, our body is going to have a priority organ. So an organ that, or an organ system, a meridian, right, that is screaming, help me, help me, help me. So if you say it's your stomach, and I do the muscle testing and say it's not your stomach, but you're like, no, I really need to take this, I really need to get my stomach better, I could give you all the stomach supplements, and you're just going to go right through it, and it's just going to find its way out of the body because it's not the priority. We need to treat the priority. And I think that's where symptom-based care can kind of have issues with it, right? Because you're really just treating a symptom. You're not treating what the body's craving. And so with the muscle testing, we can really find out, like, what is the body craving? How do we support that? And then, of course, how do we get better? So with the layers of everything, we get to just move through layers. So you could come in, again, we're using the stomach as an example, come in with a stomach ache, we do the treatment that we needed for that layer, and you come back in, and yeah, we didn't even treat your stomach, but it got better because that wasn't the problem, right? There was this underlying root cause. So the muscle testing really, really helps me get very specific to the underlying cause. Sometimes we just work on emotions the entire visit, and you come back and it's like, hey, my hip pain is gone. Like, you never adjusted me, we didn't do anything, but we were able to fix this because it's attached to that layer, and that layer is attached to your emotions. Okay, I've said a lot so far. Does anybody have questions on this yet? And I will ask my Facebook Live people that as well as our Zoom people. Awesome, good, okay. So again, I know that it is a lot of stuff, so we'll kind of keep going, and if there's questions, just let me know. So so that's where kind of the muscle testing comes in. That's what a lot of the visit is based on. So I'll first talk with you and see kind of what you think is going on. We'll do the muscle testing. I'll tell you what I think your body's trying to say what's going on, and then at the end we do the treatment. So a big part of my treatment goes back to the roots of naturopathic medicine. And the roots of naturopathic medicine is get back to nature. So I always like to use the example of as if we were living 1,000 years ago. So whether you believe that we were created then or that we evolved then, regardless, this body, this Homo sapien human body, was meant to live 1,000 years ago. Not with these nice roofs over our head and lighting and food whenever we want it, water whenever we want it, right? Like, we were hunters and gatherers. We were out in the sunshine. We were on the ground every single day. We were moving a lot, right, as a hunter and gatherer. So what I'm trying to get everyone to understand is that the closer that we get back to nature, the closer that we'll get to our body's true healing power. And that's where it comes, I'm not fixing you. And I tell this to my patients all the time. It's not me that's doing the work. It's your body that's fixing itself. And I think that's the coolest part, and I think it's the most important to understand, is that we have this vital force that's within us. It's our vitality. And we're all given it, right? It's like when you cut yourself, you know, yeah, maybe you want to put some Neosporin and a Band-Aid on it, but you know that in a few days that cut is going to be better, right? If you break your arm, you know that after getting a cast and waiting, you know, 6 weeks or however long, it's going to get better. And so that's the true medicine. Like, you all have the medicine within you. All that I'm doing is kind of figuring out what we need to kind of, you know, put it in the right direction, put it back into place, whether it's an adjustment or, you know, the right nutrition or whatever, but we have that healing power. So all of the treatments that I do, I'm really looking to boost that vitality. So after you tell me what's wrong with you, and then I tell you what's wrong with you, and then we kind of talk, and I say, let's go over some basic treatment guidelines. So these are things that I tell everybody living on this planet as a Homo sapien, if we are to do them, we will increase our vitality. And that's the whole thing. I'm not saying you're gonna do this and you're gonna feel, you know, this symptom is gonna get better. You're just gonna feel better. Like, you're gonna be more vital. And with more vitality brings better health. So, you know, what are some of the basic treatment guidelines? Well, the first one I kind of already touched on, water. You know, drinking, my rule of thumb is drink half your body weight in ounces. Now, we live up at 8,500 feet or more, you know, here in Conifer and Bailey. Add a little bit of water because elevation causes dehydration. So same thing when you're flying on a plane. You know, you want to be drinking a lot more water when you're up in the air because your body's using it all. Water is our biggest conductor. And here I am getting a little thirsty, so everybody go forth, take a drink. But water is the biggest conductor. So even with my muscle testing, you know, this is a neurological test. It's not a strength test. It's not who's going to the gym more. No, it's a neurological test. Is this muscle talking to your brain? Is your brain talking back to your muscle? Now, what makes this happen? Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, medical terminology I can use, but really it's conduction, it's electricity. And so the best conductor on the planet is water. So the more water that we have, the more energy we have. I use water a lot of ways through therapy, even hydrotherapy. That's another one of the basic treatment guidelines. Alternating hot and cold. So if you ever, you know, the old, I guess saying was like, if you see a deer who's hurt its leg, you know, you'll find them next to the water because they realize that putting themselves into the water is going to help with their pain. So I have different, you know, magic sock treatments or alternating hot and cold in the shower, which everybody, what? You want me to end my shower on cold? Well, yeah, because, yay! We got one in the audience, I love it. Because, yeah, you know, it increases your vitality. So how do you feel when you turn that cold water on?
First shocked.
Yes, right, you're like, oh my gosh. And that's your vital force, like coming alive and saying, hey, I'm here. I can help you. I can make you warmer. And then what happens?
Then I usually just try to jumpstart myself, and then it gets a little bit easier to deal with.
Yeah.
And I use hot to relax my muscles, and then cold to wake myself up.
Exactly. Yep, that's awesome. And that wake yourself up is your vital force talking to you, knocking at the door, saying, hey, I'm here. And so what's happening is you get that cold shock. Your body's like, oh, I'm freezing. And so it shivers, right? That shivering, that shock is bringing heat. And so that heat is supposed to heat you up. And so after you get out of that cold shower, in just a couple minutes, you're feeling good again. You feel warm, right? We live in this, you know, society that we're just very coddled, right? We're just, you know, we live in houses with heat. And we jumpstart our cars with our little beeper, and we run outside really quickly to not get cold, get into our car, drive to the grocery store. God forbid we go into the frozen section, right, where we have to be cold again without our jacket on, right? Like, come on, we need this vitality. We need to be jumping in the Platte and coming out and, you know, doing those polar plunges. You know, Wim Hof is a good proponent to hydrotherapy, and he talks a lot about how anybody, because again, we're all Homo sapien, like we're all made up of the same stuff. And so we can train our bodies to be able to do these polar plunges. And with different breathing techniques, you know, we're not freezing, we're not dying in the water. We're more vital than we were before. So hydrotherapy, water therapy, I mean, it's like the first thing that, you know, God created, and it's the best thing that we can use to heal us. You know, again, of course, how much percentage of our body is made up of water? You know, in the 70s to 80%. And so just re-getting that water in there is super important. Another basic treatment guideline I talk about is grounding. So putting our feet on the earth. Again, as hunters and gatherers, that's all we did was walk around the ground, you know, until we discovered shoes, and then we put those on our feet, but even that was made of animal hide or something natural, so it wasn't this rubber and plastic that's, you know, between us and the ground. So what does the earth have to offer? So much, right? Electricity-wise, you know, on kind of the basic idea of ion exchange, there's a lot of negative ions in the earth. Negative is good. Negative ions are the good ones. A lot of positive ions in Wi-Fi and cities and storms. So if you ever have people come through, you know, or if you know them yourself, and say, oh yeah, I can tell you when a storm is coming, or every time a storm is coming, my joints are hurting, my head is hurting. It's an ion issue. So too much of the positive ions coming through, not enough of the negative ions that you're getting from the earth. So the first thing, whenever someone comes in, oh yeah, I can feel the storm, awesome. Let's do some grounding, you know, let's do an ion foot bath. Let's do something to change the ionic, you know, atmosphere of your life. There's, again, you know, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I didn't come up with any of this stuff, right? I'm just taking it. I like to think that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Because all of this medicine has been here for ages, as long as we've been here. There's a great documentary on grounding, so if you guys are interested in that. And like I said, Wim Hof, he's awesome for the hydrotherapy point of everything too. So yeah, so water, hydrotherapy, grounding. The other thing that's super important is while we're grounding, we're outside in the sunlight, we're getting fresh air. Again, as a hunter and gatherer, we were out there all the time. Today, we can spend the entire day under a roof, especially now that we're all home. You know, we're not actually going to the office anymore. We're not spending that time in the car, which, you know, fresh air is coming in. We're just at home. And so really get outside. I tell my patients at least 15 minutes a day. Get outside into sunlight. Breathe fresh air. Up here in Conifer, we're a little bit spoiled compared to those people down in Denver, or I have some people, some friends from Phoenix that are joined us. Hey, Whitney. So, you know, in those places, a lot more of those positive ions, a lot more, you know, not as clean of air that you can breathe there. So, you know, different things that I make specific for different people depending on what they're dealing with. But for most of us, if we can just get outside, fresh air, fresh water, sunlight, and grounding, you know, that's going to be a big part of it. The other big thing that we can do is laugh and smile and be, you know, happy, right? Because that happiness, even just smiling, you know, I'm smiling here and I'm watching everyone in the audience smile too. It's addictive, right? Unfortunately, you know, these days we have something covering our smile sometimes, but, you know, the more that we can smile, the more that we can laugh, it's the best medicine, right? Laughter. So I'll tell my people too, I'm like, fake it. If you're having a bad day and nothing is bringing you up, put on YouTube, find a cute little cat video or something, you know, that you can just smile at, and it's going to boost your mood regardless of what, you know, negative is kind of bringing you down. So, you know, definitely make sure that you're getting that laughter in there, you're smiling, and, you know, giving yourself all those happy hormones. You know, like I said, even when you're at home alone, you know, we always have our phones, right? So just look something up to make yourself smile. What else? I have a couple others that I'm not going to talk about as much today, so have to come see me to get those tips. But again, I just wanted to kind of give you guys the basics of, you know, what is naturopathic medicine, what is applied kinesiology, how am I using muscle testing, and really, like, how am I getting patients better? And that's what matters, is that at the end of the day, you're feeling better. And it's not, you know, this, you know, magic pill, here, take this and all your problems are gonna go away. But with the muscle testing, with figuring out these layers, we really can figure out, what do you need right now? What would be the best thing for you and your body right now at this moment? And, you know, all we can do is increase vitality. So by increasing that vitality in this outer layer that we're working on is going to help everything, you know? Another thing I'll talk about real quickly is homeopathy. So homeopathy is one of the best ways I feel to increase vitality as far as like a supplement, something I can give you. So what homeopathy is, a lot of people, even my dad, thinks of me as a homeopathic doctor, right? So I think it's one of those like catchphrases, right? Like, oh, homeopathy, yeah, that's what you do. Well, it's really just a modality that we do. So again, homeopathy, gosh, when was Hahnemann? I want to say the 1600s is when he started figuring out homeopathy, but the idea is like cures like. So Hahnemann, who's the father of homeopathy, he also coined the term allopathy, and that's what, you know, Western medicine, medical doctors practice, is opposite cure. So al being opposite, whereas homeo being same. And so allopathy, you know, back in the 1600s, when somebody had an infection, they were giving things like aluminum and mercury, and like these really hard hitters, trying to like change what was going on in the system. Hahnemann, you know, in that same frame was like, what if I gave a little tiny dose of the same thing that you have to correct that imbalance? So I like to use the example of, you know, someone with like ADHD, right? A kid who gets diagnosed. And they're moving around all the time, and they can't sit still, and they're fidgeting, and you try to put them in a seat, and they just don't want to sit here, right? Well, what would you do to somebody who, let's say an adult, whoever, drinks a bunch of coffee, right? Fidgety, can't sit still, heart's racing, right? You know, kind of. So if you give homeopathic coffee to a kid who's, you know, or anybody really, who has too much energy, a little hyperactive, you know, it's almost like a mirror. So the homeopathy, you know, the homeopathy is saying to the body, hey, you remember that there's like something going on in here that you gotta fix? And so the homeopathy is talking to that vitality, that vital force that's within you. And it's really helping that vitality come out and be like, oh, that's right, I was gonna work on this, yeah. But we get so bogged down, right? You know, this patient I'm talking about, this 5 decades here on this earth, you know, their body is doing so much to fix itself and to, you know, correct balance that it forgets what, you know, really matters and like what truly can help them. And so you give them that homeopathic and they get calmer. And their body realizes that, oh yeah, I don't need to be this way. Same thing for like infections. You know, if you have a bacterial infection, what do we give in the West? Antibiotics. We're gonna kill that infection. Western medicine is all about killing. We're gonna kill cancer, kill the infection, you know, beat COVID, all these things, right? Whereas in naturopathic medicine, Eastern medicine, we talk about strengthening the system so the system can go through and figure out what it needs to do with this. So if you had a bacterial infection and I give you a homeopathic, so tiny little dose of that bacterial infection, it tells the body like, oh yeah, I need to heal myself. That's right, I know how to take care of this infection. And you know, it goes forth with that vital force and can do that. Yeah, question?
So when you give them like the same thing, it's kind of like you give them something to scan, like an antibody almost, to create a little bit easier as well.
Interesting way to think about it like that. Yeah, I mean, you know, similar. But again, like the vital force is not something that we can measure. It's not, you know, like antibodies. Like we can take a blood test and say like, oh yeah, you produce antibodies against this antigen, which would be that bacteria, and you're fighting it, right? The antibody is doing what it's supposed to do. Whereas the vital force is not that specific. It's just saying like, oh, there's something wrong and everything within me is gonna do what it can to kind of fix it. It's not just the blood, yeah.
It's more like a reminder, or so when you ingest something, you're kind of like making it more familiar with what it's fighting and what's the root cause.
Yep.
And not exactly just giving it an antibody.
Exactly.
To be more familiar with.
Yep, exactly. You know, and that's a good point you make, because antibodies are very specific to the thing. So like someone with celiac disease, right? They have a lot of antibodies to celiac, or to gluten, right? And so when the gluten comes into contact with the body, these antibodies run over and isolate it and try to get it out of the system, and that's why we get some symptoms. Well, those antibodies are very specific to that gluten particle. Just as, you know, antibodies to different diseases are very specific, like to bacteria, virus, whatever, to that particle. Whereas homeopathy is very general. It's just saying like, this is gonna help increase this vital force, make your vitality better. So sometimes, even if we're using the example of a bacterial infection, and I give somebody what they need for that, I don't even say, oh yeah, this is gonna cure your infection. No, because I don't know if it's gonna. I know that this is gonna help your body heal. And so whether we're treating that infection today or we're treating something else that your body needs, but this homeopathic is going to help your body heal. And so that's how it's a little bit more general than that. Does that make sense?
So it's not as measurable as
Exactly.
As like Western medicine or anything like
Yep.
that.
And I say that it's not measurable yet, right?
Okay.
Like, science is only as fast as our technology is. So science can only measure like an ultrasound or an x-ray or a blood test, things like that. Like it can only measure what we have technologically discovered that it can measure. Whereas with this energy thing, it's a lot different. Like we all know that, if you were to smell something like, blueberry muffins cooking, right? You smell those blueberry muffins and you watch what happens. You can do like a brain scan and watch what happens, and it goes up to a certain part of your brain and it triggers this memory that brings you back to grandma's house when you were 5. We don't know, all we know is that it triggers something in the brain, but everything else from there, the memories that you have, we don't have a way of measuring that, right? Like we don't have a device where you can plug it into my brain and see the memory on a computer, in movies they do actually, but yet we haven't come up with that. So people could say, oh yeah, energy, we don't have energy because we can't measure it. But we all know that we have memories, right? We all know that we cut ourselves and we get better. So there is something within us that's making this better. We also have things like Zytoscans that can measure acupuncture meridians and see where the energy's at with that. Speaking of acupuncture, they've come up with different ways of measuring energy, throughout Chinese medicine and things like that too. So different cultures can measure it. Ours is just the one that, we're very hardcore on these, blood tests or, x-rays, things that are tangible versus the things that are energy. And in my opinion, in the practice that I've seen, it's not the tangible things that heal people. It's the space between all the particles. So I totally blew over talking about energy and the space between the particles. So if we look at next week, I'm going to have a PowerPoint slide to show you all these things, but today, here we are. So if we look at an atom, right? So basic science, we have an atom. Atom is what makes up our life, as far as we know it in science today. So atoms have neutrons, protons, and they have electrons. And electrons spin around the nucleus, and there's different fields of the electrons. And we used to think of it as just like, okay, yeah, they just hang out here, and that's just what this atom is. Well, Nikola Tesla and Einstein back in the early 1900s were figuring out that there's more to this atom than just these particles. Like this space that the electrons are playing around, that's energy. Like this space that we're in here, this is not empty space. This space is full of electrons just spinning and spinning and spinning. And so each of those electrons, my electrons and your electrons are colliding right now, right? So like this energy field within us are making, moves, and we can study this. If you look at quantum physics, they did the wave particles, and we used to think, again, that we're all just made of matter. But really, we are wave particles clashing together that create this solid form that we see now. But there's so much vibration outside of that. And here I am getting, a little more scientific than I anticipated, but again, I think it's important to know that we are more energy than matter. And, I tell patients all the time, I can shove all the supplements in the world, the best quality, right down your throat, but if we don't change the energy, it doesn't change, maybe it can, but it's not getting to that root cause, right? You can take a steroid and feel awesome, but, down the line, once that has worn out, we haven't found that root cause of what is the problem. And so that is where I feel more of this energy matter, energy comes in. That's where this emotional piece comes in. So, I say emotional, but really it's everything that encompasses, the energy medicine, and all of that kind of stuff. I have a lot of, different take-home things that people do that incorporates the meridian system, which even the meridian system, Chinese medicine doctors back, way before Western medicine was ever a thing, they figured out that we have energy and that we have different places on our body where energy is more pronounced and where you can, more tangible. And when you touch these different places, different things shift. Like that's how acupuncture has become such a popular thing, not only here in the West, but also obviously in China. They even do things where they don't need anesthesia and they just use acupuncture to knock people out. So to do surgeries and things like that. So it's a powerful treatment, and that is one of the reasons I'm doing this talk is because I don't think enough people understand the power behind this medicine. It's not just like throwing supplements and essential oils at people, right? Like it's actually finding the root cause of why did this start in the first place? Like what kind of vibration was off to get this to start, and then how do we find the right medicine that's gonna heal it? And so I think that's where the power is at, and I think that's where the magic is just in, finding out exactly what's wrong and how to treat it, and making sure that you're doing the natural laws, so making sure you're drinking your water, getting out into nature, putting your feet in the ground, hydrotherapy, all of those things. And yeah, it's amazing once you start to put your body back into alignment, the things that just kind of float away. My first patient visit, I have you fill out a very lengthy questionnaire. And I'm asking you all about every organ system that I've been talking about, right? So how's your digestion, your heart, your lungs, your nose, sinus, all of that stuff. Because I want to see not only where are you as a whole, because you're not just the sum of your parts. Like you as a whole really means something to me. And even if we don't talk about everything that you list out in your treatment or your intake form, I know that we're going to cover it. I know that the treatments we do are going to hit all of these systems. And so I want to make sure that you and I both have an idea of where we started. Because if we know where we started, then we know that we're getting better. Or if I go back and say, hey, we haven't really talked about your sinuses in a while, but how's your congestion? Oh, that's right. My congestion's better, right? Because it's not like, we're treating the congestion. We're just treating everything else. And if you have congestion, you probably have inflammation. And you probably have something else going on in your gut that we need to work through too. So, if I were to just be an ENT doctor, right, and just looking up here, I would never really get to the cause. We'd just be throwing in, Mucinex and things like that at you, and not really ever fixing things. So, bless you. That is where, I feel like individualized medicine is great too. Every headache is not the same. Every headache should not be treated with Excedrin or ibuprofen, right? Like it could be structural, it could be chemical. So I think it's really important to get all of that information from people, and then really use the muscle testing to isolate like what is the problem, what is the treatment, and then magic happens, and it's pretty cool. So again, lots of words. Any questions from my audience? Yes, thank you.
The water. So when I saw you were talking about reverse osmosis and things like that, would you address that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so she just asked about water and reverse osmosis. I think it's a great point because not all water is created equal. Well, first of all, water is water is water. Water is not tea. Water is not lemon water. It's not cucumber water. It's not anything else. It's just H2O. So chemically, when we add something to water, it becomes, especially fruit, right? There's carbon. And so the body sees that as a food. And it's like, great, there's strawberries. We're eating a bunch of strawberries. Oh, wow, we're eating strawberries all day. Okay, we're just eating strawberries today, right? And it's trying to process that out and put it somewhere. When in reality, we're just trying to hydrate. But those cells don't see it as a hydration. It sees it as food. So that's a big thing I talk about with water. If you're drinking water, half your body weight in ounces, make sure it's pure water. But reverse osmosis can be tricky too. Reverse osmosis is the most clean water that you can get because it takes everything out. All the toxins, all the bugs, but also the minerals. And minerals are super important because water follows salt. Water follows minerals, and minerals want to get into our cells. So as the mineral comes into the cell, the water follows. And we don't want water just in our digestive tract, right? We want it in the cells. We want to get hydrated. So a lot of times I'll have someone come in who's drinking reverse osmosis, and I say, how much are you drinking? And they're way more than half their body weight in ounces. And I'm like, okay, what kind of water are you drinking? And then I start testing minerals. And it's like, you're mineral deficient because not only is the water not giving you minerals, but it could be leaching minerals from your cells as well. So making sure that, you have a high quality mineral that you're adding to your reverse osmosis water, or just making sure that your water is mineralized in some way is important too. So yeah, did that answer your question? Yeah, because I do see that all the time when people say, I'm drinking, what is going on? Or, that's why Gatorade got popular, right? Because there's electrolytes. Yeah, we need electrolytes, but there's also a ton of sugar and a ton of other stuff in Gatorade that we don't need, but we do need the electrolytes. So if we were gonna do, again, this backcountry medicine, instead of finding a high quality mineral, take some sea salt and throw it into your water. That works too. That's enough of the electrolytes that we need. So yeah, good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions from the audience? Awesome. I love to see all your smiling faces here. Just want to make sure that we're good on both ends too. Awesome. Well, Pam and Gloria and Becky and Whitney, I'm so glad to see you guys here. Thanks for coming. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Yeah, otherwise I guess we'll wrap up. And I'm really appreciative to all of you guys here. I hope you guys learned something, if anything, and hope to see you in the office or at the next health talk. I'm not quite sure what these are going to look like or how they're going to go. So if anyone has something they want to talk about or work on or hear about, absolutely I can address that as best as I can. So yeah, well, thank you guys all for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. And